Hi, I'm Rick Rheins, the Senior Rabbi at Temple Sinai in Denver, Colorado. This week's Torah portion is Mishpatim, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I also have to mention that this Shabbat is, yes, the reading of the Mishpatim, but it's also Rosh Chodesh Adar. It's the first of the month of Adar. It says in the Talmud, in the tractate Ta'anit, Sheniknas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, that when we get to the month of Adar, happiness increases. Now that's in contradistinction to that which happened in the beginning of the month of Av. The month of Av in the summertime leads into up until the ninth day of Av, the destruction of the temples, both the first and the second temple. And of course, there's increasing unhappiness at the beginning of Av. Afterwards, it eases out. But Adar, this month that ushers in the hint of spring, especially in the land of Israel, it says when Adar comes, happiness should increase. Of course, 2 weeks after Rosh Chodesh, we will have the celebration of Purim. There's another special part to this week's Torah portion and this week's Shabbat, and that is the designation of it as Shabbat Shekalim. Shabbat Shekalim, the day in which our ancestors, every family, would bring their temple dues. They would bring their dues for the maintenance, the upkeep of the temple that was in Jerusalem. It's a reminder for us too that our synagogues need us to belong, need our membership, need our dues so that we can maintain a cultural, spiritual, and intellectual home for the Jewish community. That combination of saying this is an increase of happiness, and how is that happiness manifest? It's manifest through maintaining our community, maintaining hope in times of despair. That's what I wanted to talk about a little bit with this week's Torah portion. Chapter 24 of the book of Exodus. It says in the commentary by Rashi and the other Mefarshim that chapter 24 actually precedes that which we read last week. Last week in chapter 20 of the book of Exodus, we read that Moses received the 10 commandments and presented the 10 commandments. In chapter 24, Rashi says that actually happened before the giving of the 10 commandments. It's an interesting concept. In the Talmud, again, it says, Torah, that the Torah is not written chronologically, but rather some things it goes backwards and to give us a little bit of better understanding. So what was happening in chapter 24, this week's Torah portion? Moses and Aaron and 70 elders representing all the different tribes of Israel, they went up to have this epiphany, this experience of God. And they saw something. They saw what seemed to be God. And under God was this pavement of sapphire that reflected a blue that was like of the heavens. Now, what did they actually see? That we're not exactly sure. Rambam in the Guide for the Perplexed said, in fact, their desire to actually see God, to perceive God in a physical way, was to their discredit. Indeed, sometimes it's in the times of doubt and despair, we want absolute truth. We want apprehension, complete comprehension of what is unknown or even beyond us, what's going to happen, how things are going to work out, what is God, what does God want of me? The text continues then finally with Moses being all alone on the Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. So what happened? After the elders, with their desire to concretize God, to physicalize God, to see God as one of us, after the elders went back down with the rest of the children of Israel, waiting for Moses 40 days, 40 nights, as that mountain was shaking with earthquakes and there was smoke and lightning and thunder and fire. They worried. What happened with Moses? They were kept at a distance from this mountain. They knew something was happening, but they couldn't comprehend it. And they let their wonder into worry and then despair. And eventually, as we'll read in 3 weeks, Shabbat Ki Tisa, the sin of the golden calf, they built something physical. They wanted something that they could hold on to and point to and say, this is your God, pray to this, as opposed to thinking that all life, all experience is of God. They wanted to make God something concrete, something material. That was their sin. But it reflects back to us as well. Because in times of distance, when we're keeping away from each other, in times of despair, in times of wondering what's going to happen, that morphs into worry about what's going to happen, we can sometimes let our basis and coarseness characteristics shine through. We will leap for those things which are easy and simple. We will concretize or try to manipulate those things which are beyond us. We'll create falsehoods, false truths. We can talk ourselves into riots and disputes and chaos and further despair in community. We've been through that. We know that. We've seen it in our world. We've seen it in our capital. This is the time for each of us to say, there are ultimate experiences that unite all the world. Worry is okay, but never despair. And let us not look for easy and simple truths that ultimately we use to manipulate the world so that it benefits us. No doubt is to the negative experience of others. We need to find that which unites all. God not as a thing, God not as a being, God that unites all people, regardless of faith, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of sexuality, regardless of nation, all life of God. Now that's a truth for which we can be happy. When Adar comes, when the Shabbat comes, let us renew a sense of that happiness. Sheniknas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. The month of Adar is coming in. Let us find that which unites in a positive, joyful way. A life that says, we don't know all the answers, but we'll get closer when we join one to the other, listening, appreciating, and celebrating our life. Shabbat Shalom.